Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel and to another video. So many of you asked me to make an updated video about dual booting with Windows 10 particularly, and so this is what I'm gonna do in this video. So before I get started, let me tell you first that there is actually no one solution fits all scenario for dual booting Windows 10 with a Linux distribution. It's gonna depend always from your system, it's gonna depend from your motherboard. There are so many combinations out there that it's impossible to provide one tutorial that fits everything. You will see also later the problems I had actually dual booting Windows 10 and Linux on my laptop. I'm gonna tell you afterwards what happened, but I just wanted to tell you that what you are seeing in this tutorial is just a guideline, and you will have to always see and check, of course, also your system and the requirements of your motherboard. So without further ado, let's jump into the video. So here I am on Windows 10. It's a fresh new installation of Windows 10, and the first thing I want to show you here, if I right click on the start menu and go to disk management, you will see here we have one disk only. So this disk is 60 gigabytes, and as you can see here on this installation I have three partitions. I have a recovery partition, here a small recovery partition, I have the C drive, and I have the EFI partition. Now you see this is typical actually on a system with Windows 10. Usually when you install it from scratch, the EFI system partition will be between 100 and 150 megabytes. There are some cases where the EFI partition is bigger than this, but this is a typical case when the EFI partition is fairly small. So that, for example, is going to be an issue if you want to install something like Pop OS, which requires a EFI partition of at least 512 megabytes. So now that we saw the disk here, what I want to do, I want to shrink the C drive in order to make space for my Linux distribution. So let me right click here on the C disk and click shrink volume. Now it's gonna calculate here a little bit how much space there is, and the disk is 60 gigabytes. So I'm just gonna type in here 30,000 megabytes because it corresponds to 30 gigabytes approximately, and then I can click shrink, and it's gonna take a moment to do that. So there you go, we have now 30 gigabytes for Windows and almost 30 gigabytes for our new Linux distribution. So we have now the space ready. Now in this tutorial I'm gonna show you actually three different distributions, because each one actually offers a different installer, and I want you just to have an idea on how it works on each one. So we are going to install first Manjaro, which is providing the Calamares installer. Then we are going to install Ubuntu, which is using the Ubiquiti installer. And finally, I want to show you how you can get started also with Arch Linux, because that is done in the terminal. So enough talking here, let's close the window. And let's actually power off shortly my virtual machine here, because I need to attach the Manjaro ISO. So I'm gonna go to information here, and I'm gonna choose here my ISO, which I have here, Manjaro XFCE, and click choose volume. Just make sure that the boot options are there, so this is fine. And now I can run the machine, and I will go full screen again. There you go. So let me select here my time zone, go to Europe here, and the last city is Zurich, and the key table, this is CH. Now, because this is a virtual machine, I'm going to boot with open source drivers. Of course, depending on your machine, you can choose also with proprietary drivers, especially if you have an NVIDIA card. Also notice that in this boot menu, we have detect EFI bootloaders. So this is something that came in handy for me when I installed actually Manjaro on my laptop, but I'm gonna tell you more about this later. So let's go here and boot with open source drivers. So it's gonna take a moment here to boot up Manjaro, and we're going to have to partition our disk and do everything else we need to do. So let me actually here change the display resolution so that it looks a little better also for you. I'm gonna go for 1080p and click apply and click keep the configuration. There you go. And let's launch the installer. So we can close this window here, and I'm gonna select for language American English, and actually I'm going to make this window slightly bigger, so, and click next. Now, because I have already an internet connection here, it detects already my position. If you don't, you can of course always select your Wi-Fi if you're using Wi-Fi down here. Then I can click next here. And I need to select my keyboard layout, which is right here, and then select the variant and click next. Now here, let's go to manual partitioning because we have full control of what we want to do here with our partitions. So let's click next. And as you can see here, we have the EFI partition from Windows. We have here the Microsoft Reserve partition. This is a typical 16 megabytes partition. We have here our C drive, and we have here the recovery partition that was listed before in Windows. Here we have our free space where we want to install Manjaro. So let's create here the partitions we need. Now, what's different in this tutorial that I'm showing you compared to previous tutorials I did is that in this case, I'm going to create actually a second EFI system partition. And I'm going to actually install the bootloader in here, so that when I wipe actually the Linux distribution from the system, I will be able to boot back to Windows just fine. Now, I'm saying here just fine in most cases, although there are also exceptions there. And I'm going to show you that a little later. So let's go ahead here and click Create to create our first partition. So as I said, I'm going to create a second EFI partition here. I'm going to do it for 200 megabytes. The file system type is going to be, it has to be FAT32. And the mount point is going to be boot EFI. Now for the flags, I'm going to go with boot and then click OK. Now I'm going to select again the free space here and I'm going to click Create. Now here you can choose whether you want to have a root partition and a home partition. To make it easier for me in this case, I'm just going to select here one partition and create just one root partition, but feel free to do also a home partition if you have more space available on your disk. ext4 is fine for me. And the mount point is going to be the slash and the flag is going to be root in my case, and then click OK. So now actually I didn't create any swap, but I can always create a swap file later in the system if I need to. So for now this is fine, so we can click next. And now I can create my account here and I call my machine Manjaro and I give it a password. And I'm going to select the same password for the admin account and click next. Now here we have a summary of changes, which is fine. And we can click install and then install now. So it's going to take a moment here to install Manjaro. So I'm going to pause the video here and I'll be back with you when it's done. So the installation is now done, but before restarting, actually let me click done here without clicking restart now. And let me open up one terminal here. And I'm going to increase here slightly the font size. There you go. And so let me switch actually to the root user by typing in su and a dash. The password is Manjaro on the live ISO. And I want to verify actually first if Manjaro picked up actually Windows, because I have Windows installed here. We want a dual boot, remember? So to do this, I have to actually root into the new installation that we just did. So this is a very similar approach as we have in Arch. So let me first type in lsblk, because I need to check the names of the partitions. So you can see we have SDA5, which is the EFI partition I created for Manjaro, and SDA6, which is the root partition. So I'm going to type in first mount /dev/SDA6, and it's going to be mounted on /MNT, and also mount /dev/SDA5, and this one is going to be mounted as /MNT/boot/EFI. That's the mount point we defined before. Now I need to root in here, so I can type in Manjaro -root on /MNT. So you can see it enters the shell here. If you want to have bash, you can just type in bash here and you're going to be in the bash shell again. Now, if I type in here update-grub, it's going to regenerate the configuration file for grub. And I just want to make sure that Windows is detected. Now, you can see here OS Prober actually is running, but Windows is not detected here. So that's a little bit of a problem, but we are going to fix this afterwards when we reboot the machine. Because when we rerun this command, once we reboot Manjaro, we are going to be able to add Windows with this command here. So let's actually exit from here. And I'm going to exit also here and then type in reboot and hit enter. And it's going to take a moment here to boot up, but I need to remove also the ISO. So let me close this. I need to power off the machine here shortly and remove the ISO. There you go. And rerun the machine. And now we should have the Manjaro bootloader, the grub bootloader available to us, but you can see the machine is booting actually in Manjaro directly because Windows was not recognized, was not detected before. No problem there. So let's log in into Manjaro here. And again, I need to change the display resolution one time. So I'm gonna go to display and then 1080p and click apply. There you go. And close this window, we don't need it for now. And let me pull up again the terminal. I'm gonna make it slightly bigger so. And let's type in now directly in here sudo update-grub and hit enter. We need to authenticate, of course. So it's gonna take a moment, but this time it should pick up actually Windows just fine. So as you can see here, found Windows Boot Manager. So that means now if we type in a reboot, we should be able to see the grub bootloader with both options to start Manjaro or Windows. So there is something I want to share with you is, for example, I wasn't able to do this trick with my laptop because after I installed Manjaro, my laptop would boot directly into Windows. So what I had to do was actually to boot again my laptop from the Manjaro ISO, select display EFI boot managers from the list I showed you before, and from there select the Manjaro bootloader. And then once I was in Manjaro, I ran the sudo update grub command and I was able to also have Windows on the grub bootloader. So a small tip here just to say that for every machine it's slightly different, and as I said before, there is no one option fits everything. Now this is all there is to it for Manjaro. Now what about, for example, Ubuntu? So let's shut down here the virtual machine shortly here. I'm just gonna go to force off. And I'm going to select here my Ubuntu 2104 ISO, and I'm going to then run the machine again. I'll go full screen here. It's going to take a moment here to boot up the ISO. And you can see here we have the Ubuntu bootloader. So let's boot Ubuntu here, and we will try to do the same installation with Ubuntu. Now, one of the differences between the Ubuntu installer Ubiquiti and Calamares is that Ubiquiti actually offers you the possibility to define the partition where the bootloader should be installed. So for now, let's click try Ubuntu because I want to change also the display resolution here, which is going to be automatically adjusted once we've done this. There you go. So I can double click again the installer, and we are going to start again the Ubiquiti installer. So English is fine. And I'm going to select again my language, my keyboard language. This is this time Switzerland here. And I'm going to select the variant and click continue. Now I'm going to go for the minimal option here because just to make the installation a little shorter, and I don't need to install third-party software for this machine, and click continue. So here again, I'm going to go to something else and then click continue because I want to manually partition my disk one more time. So you remember before we saw in Manjaro we had STA5 and STA6. This is the EFI partition for Manjaro and this is the root partition for Manjaro. So I'm going to remove actually both. I want to start from scratch. So I'm going to click the minus here and it's going to delete that partition. And then I'm going to go to STA6 and do the same thing. And again, it's going to take a moment. So I'm going to go back to the free space here, and now I can create my new partitions. So I'm going to do the same process. I'm going to click the plus. And first I'm going to create my EFI system partition. Again, I'm going to do it for 200 megabytes. That's fine. And use as, I'm going to say here, EFI system partition and click OK. Now it's going to take a moment to do this. And we can go back to the free space. And again, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to create a root partition here. So I'm just going to accept the defaults. ext4 is fine. And the mount point is going to be the slash for the root. And again, it's going to take a moment to create that. There you go. So you can see here we have also on the bottom device for bootloader installation. So this is right now the disk, but actually I have STA5, which I want to define as a EFI system partition for Ubuntu. So I'm going to select it here in the list, and then I'm going to click install now. So I'm just going to confirm here and click continue. So here we can select the time zone again, because I'm connected to the internet. If you're not, you can always select your Wi-Fi right here and then click continue. And we can create our user. So I'm just going to call this Ubuntu and a password for the user. And that's gonna be fine for me, and the rest is fine. So I'm just gonna click continue. And now it's going to install Ubuntu. So again, this is going to take a moment. So I'll pause the video here and I'll be back with you guys when it's finished. So the installation has finished. Now I know Ubuntu will pick up actually Windows automatically. So I don't need to go into the terminal here and do the same things I did in Manjaro before. So I'm just going to click here, restart now. And it's going to ask me probably to remove the installation medium. So I'm gonna do that. And I'm just gonna delete this and click apply. And I'll go back in there and hit enter. And let's see, now we should be rebooting the machine just fine. And we should have actually the Ubuntu and the Windows Boot Manager. So that is it actually for Ubuntu. It's fairly simple and it doesn't require any other tweak in the terminal after you install it. So this is the main difference between the two installers, Calamares and Ubiquiti. In Ubiquiti, you have the option to select the partition for your bootloader, whereas in Calamares, you need to tweak this a little bit. Now, I cannot possibly test this on every distribution, so I cannot really say if it works the same way in other distributions using the Calamares installer, but at least for these two, this is how it is. Now let's try the same thing with Arch Linux. So let's close down this machine here, and I'm going to mount now the ISO for Arch, which I have also here somewhere. There you go. And I click apply, and I can start my machine, and I'm going full screen there. So this is not going to be a full installation of Arch. I just want to show you here how you can do it in Arch Linux. Now let me add here the video parameter 1920 per 1080. This is just because I am on a virtual machine, and it's going to take a moment here to boot up Arch Linux. Now again, everything I'm showing you here is mostly for UEFI systems. Now on MBR's legacy systems, things are a little bit easier because the bootloader is going to be actually installed always on the disk name, not on one partition. Then of course you have to be careful when there is a Windows update. It might be happening also that the bootloader is going to be erased. On UEFI machines, if you have two EFI partitions, that shouldn't happen. And when you remove Linux, actually the Windows bootloader should be intact, except in certain conditions, which I'm going to show you afterwards. So set font ter-132n to increase the font size here. And I'll load my keys just to make sure that I don't make too many typos. -18.1. There you go. And I clean up the terminal and type in lsblk. So you can see again, we have here the SDA5. It's the EFI partition that we created for Ubuntu, and SDA6 is our root partition. So because this is a UEFI machine, I'm going to actually use again cgdisk/dev/sda, and I'm going to delete first these partitions. So first I'm going to go with the EFI partition here, and I'm going to select here delete, and I'm going to move down to the root partition and select delete. Now this is just to show you how we can do it, but I can go back now to the free space and create again another EFI partition. So the first sector is going to be fine. We accept the defaults. The size in sector, I'm going to go for 300 megabytes in this case. And the code for the EFI partition is EF00. And I'm going to call this partition EFI Linux and hit enter. I'm going to move down to the free space and create a new partition here. I'm going to accept the defaults for the size as well. Again, I'm not going to create a home partition here. And the code is also fine. And the name is root. So we can go ahead now and write the changes to the disk. And I confirm with yes. And the operation has completed successfully. So we can quit out of cgdisk here. And we can type in again lsblk just to check our partitions. You can see we have the same ones, SDA5, SDA6. So next step is to format them. So mkfs.vfat/dev/sda5 for the EFI partition, and mkfs.ext4/dev/sda6 on the root partition. Now this is not a full installation tutorial of Arch. I'm just going to do it here fairly quick to install the base system. And once we have formatted this, we can mount the partitions. So mount /dev/sta6. First we mount our root partition on /mnt. Then we create our boot directory, so mkdir -p on /mnt/boot/efi, and we can mount /dev/sta5 on /mnt/boot/efi. So now we can install the base packages, so pacstrap /mnt on base, and then Linux for the Linux kernel, linux/firmware, and also git and vim and amd-u code, because I have an AMD processor. If you have an Intel processor, intel-u code, and it's going to download the base packages. So once this is done, we are just going to create the file system table, and I'm going to download my script to install the base system only, because there is something I need to show you again here on the grub bootloader for Arch. So it's still downloading the packages here, and it shouldn't take too long. These are not big packages, but it's not using the fastest mirrors right now, so that's why it's taking a little longer than usual. But now the download is done, so we are now going to install the packages. There you go. This is not going to take too long. They are not big packages to install, so we are now installing the last ones and rebuilding the module dependencies. Now it's creating the images for our system, and now we are done. So let's generate the file system table. Gen fstab -U/mnt, we append to /mnt/etc/fstab. If you want more information about these commands, I recommend you to check my other tutorials for full Arch Linux installation. And then we can chroot in, so arch -chroot/mnt. Now let me pull down my script from GitLab. So git clone https://gitLab.com/eflinux/arch-install-base. This is the private repository. There is also a public one that you find on my GitLab page. And I need to authenticate here because it's a private repository. And now it's downloading my script, so cd arch install base, and I need to edit the vim base script because that's the one actually I need to install. I don't need to install any desktop environment here or window manager. It's just to show you the base system. So I want to actually confirm this, so I'm just going to remove the no confirm. And for the drivers, it's going to be fine. The partitions are going to be fine. The only thing I'm going to disable here is TLP because I don't need it in a virtual machine. And now I can save this file and exit Vim. I can give now execute permissions to the base script. I'm going to run it from the root file system. So /arch install base and then base.sh. So now we need to select our packages. I'm going to select the defaults here. I need to remove IP tables and install the base packages. So this is going to take maybe 30-40 seconds. So I'm going to pause the video here quickly and I'm going to be back with you guys once it's finished. So the installation is now done, but there is something that we need to change. So let me clean up the terminal and type in again the grub configuration command. grub-o/boot/grub/grub.cfg, because I want to make sure that the Windows boot manager is actually detected. So let's see if it happens. Now you can see here we have actually this thing for which I did already a video. The problem is now, since the new update for the grub package, we have OS Prober disabled by default. So OS Prober is the package probing for other operating systems in the system, and then it's going to add that entry into the grub bootloader. But because we have this function disabled, we are not able to do this. So we need to change the default configuration file for grub. And to do this, we can type in vim/etc/default/grub. And I'm going to move here at the end of the file. And I'm going to create a new line just here and type in here grub_disable _os_prober equal false. Then I can save this file and exit. And if I try to rerun again the configuration command, now we should have Windows picked up correctly. You can see now OS Prober will be executed, and you can see also Windows Boot Manager has been detected. So now actually this is done for the base install of Arch. So I can type in here exit and then umount -A, and then I can reboot my machine. I'll need to probably remove the ISO from the virtual machine here, so let me do this very quickly. And let me select here, apply, and restart the machine again. And now we should have the grab bootloader offering us the possibility to boot Arch and the Windows Boot Manager, as you can see. So this is actually all there is to it about dual booting. As I said, this is a guideline. Now, what happens if we want to, let's say, remove Linux and you want to have your whole machine with Windows again? Now we go back to Windows Boot Manager here, and it's going to take a moment to boot up back in Windows. So I can enter my password here, and we are back on the desktop. So let's right click on the start menu and go to disk management. Now you can see here we have our partitions. So this is the second EFI partition I created now for Arch, and this is the root partition. So this one actually it's fairly simple. We can right click here and click delete volume and then confirm with yes, and this is going to be deleted. But what happens if we want to remove actually the second EFI partition? You can see if I right click here, we don't have any option except the help menu, which is not really helping us. So to do this, we need to actually open disk part in the Windows PowerShell. So let's right click on the start menu. I'm going to choose the administrator version here and confirm with yes. Now here I'm going to type in disk part. And we have only one disk here in the system, so I don't need to select the disk. But what I need to do is to list the volumes in our system here. And as you can see, we can see the partitions. So the one I'm looking for is the 300 megabytes EFI partition I created for Arch, which corresponds to volume number 3. So I'm going to type in cell vol for select volume and then 3. And usually what you would do here, you would type in delete volume. But when you hit enter, you will have an error. As you can see there, cannot delete a protected partition without the force protected parameter set. So what we can do, we can pull up the last command and add as a parameter override. Just so, and hit enter. And you can see now disk part successfully deleted the volume. So we can exit and we can close the Windows PowerShell here, and I can open up again the disk management. And you can see now I have my unallocated space. So I could in theory go back here and click extend volume if I want to use only one operating system here, and click finish. And now in theory this should be done. So let's see what happens when we reboot the machine. Now, for example, when I did this on my laptop, it worked fine. I could boot directly into Windows. Now let's see what happened here in this case when I click restart. So let's see if it boots directly or if we have any issue. So as I said before, there is no one solution fits everything. In this case, there are some things which have been left off in the system. So how we can solve this problem? So to do this, we need to have a Windows ISO that you can download for free from the Microsoft website. And then you need to boot your machine from there. So let me do this. I'm just going to go here to the CD-ROM and I'm going to select here my Windows ISO, which I already downloaded. And then I'm going to click again the Start Virtual Machine button and boot my machine from the Windows ISO. So press any key to boot from CD, so I'm going to do that. And I'm going to just change my keyboard layout here. So let me select my keyboard, which is with German, and click Next. Now here I'm going to go to Repair Your Computer. And I'm going to click Troubleshoot. I'm sorry, here the resolution is not the best one, but I cannot change this one. And then I'm going to open the command prompt. So the first thing I'm going to do, again, I'm going to use disk part. And again, because I have only one disk there, I don't need to select the disk, but I can list the volumes. And the EFI partition for the Windows installation is the 100 megabytes we saw at the beginning of the video, which corresponds to volume number 2. So we need to select that volume. So we can type in cell vol 2 for select volume 2. Now let's assign actually one letter to this volume by typing in assign letter equal. I'm going to type in here M. You can choose any other letter free in the system, of course. And this is done for disk part. So I can type in exit in here Now the next step is to move into this newly mounted drive. So to do this, we can type in cd/d and then the name of the drive, in my case m:/EFI/Microsoft/boot and / again and hit enter. So now we are in the EFI system partition. Now, depending on the system you have, you will have different ways of restoring the bootloader. If you have a legacy system, you will use the bootrec command, but if you have a UEFI machine, you will need to use the bcd boot tool. I will leave a link in the video description to an article which explains both approaches. Because this is a UEFI machine, I'm going to use the bcd boot tool. So the first thing I need to do is to use the attrib command to remove the hidden read-only and system attributes from the bcd file. So I'm going to type in here attrib bcd-s-h and then -r and hit enter. Now I want to rename the bcd file that I already in the system, so I can type in ren for rename bcd and I'm going to rename it to bcd.back1. So backup 1 basically, and hit enter. So now I can restore the bootloader by typing in bcd boot and then C for the Windows drive, / then Windows-L, and then I'll specify the language of my installation. In my case is en-us, and then -s, and then the M drive for the EFI system partition, /f, and then all. So what this command does, basically the C Windows is the path to the Windows installation, of course. /len-us is a type of system locale, and then we can hit enter. As you can see, there are boot files successfully created. So what we can do, we can type in exit, and I'm going to actually turn off once my PC because I need to remove the ISO from the virtual machine, and click apply. And now I start my machine again, and we should be able to boot in Windows just fine. As you can see, now Windows is booting up already. So this is actually a little troubleshooting. As I said before, there is no perfect solution for every machine, but I think you have enough information to move around different kind of scenarios. So this is a general overview on how you can dual boot Windows 10 with a Linux distribution. Now, as I said already in the video, there is no one solution fits every machine, so you will have to troubleshoot sometimes. And as I noted also at the beginning of the video, don't forget to turn off secure boot and fast boot in Windows in the power options, especially if you're running Ubuntu, because otherwise your Wi-Fi will not work. And if you have any question about the video, let me know in the comments below. I will try to answer you, but be aware that I will not be able to answer every single question regarding your machine, because every machine, as I said, has different settings. Anyway, I hope you liked the video, guys. If you did, please hit the thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. That always helps me out. And if you want to support my work, you can become a patron, or if you want, you can donate via PayPal through my website as well. Thank you so much for watching the video, guys. I really appreciate that, and I'll see you very soon in the next one.